Hello, everybody. Happy Friday, and welcome to week 3 of the VML. My name's Hayu, or Nafet, and I'm joined today by a very special guest.
Hi, everybody.
And broadcaster on Games. It's Emma. Emma Handy. Thanks for joining us, Emma. How are you today?
I can't complain too awful much. I'm just excited to be casting a Magic event again. I've been looking forward to this all week. It's honestly just a great event y'all put on, tight ship y'all are doing. So I'm just happy to be here.
Well, we're very happy to have you here with us, Emma. Just for the viewers, as with every single week, today we have 4 recorded matches for everybody to enjoy. Although these matches are recorded, we are seeing this live. So myself and Emma, we haven't seen these matches. We don't know who wins. And we are going to, be reacting and commentating live, the same as everybody in the audience. So for those of you who don't know, the VML is a weekly Magic Arena League showcasing the talents of women and non-binary players throughout the Magic sphere. We actually have 4 divisions this season, and each division has 8 players in it. So everyone in each division plays like a cute little round robin with each other. And then at the end of the season, we cut to top 12, and there are some playoffs. This season, which is our second season, is actually super sweet because we have quite a cool prize pool. Currently, the prize pool is sitting at $480, and of course, if you, our lovely viewers, want to donate and support the VML and support our players, you can do so. Any subscriptions to this channel, any Twitch bits, any little bits and pieces you have lying around will all go towards the prize pool 100%. Myself and Emma are Emma's very kindly volunteering her time. I'm in this for the long run. And then, so Emma, this week, obviously with Standard the way it is right now, before the ban, it's kind of a bit of a sunset show, I guess, for this format. As you'll see, there have been quite a lot of Jeskai Laka decks submitted. Not that surprising, I guess. And then, but we are hoping to bring to everybody some of the more creative ways in which some of our players have tried to, attack this meta game, try to make something of it that isn't just submit the best deck.
Right, so what we're seeing this week is a lot of players basically knowing that Jeskai Luka is the thing that their opponent is most likely to bring to the table. And you can see a lot of the decks that people have leaned into this week are sort of the things that you would expect to attack the weaknesses of an 80-card combo deck. We see a lot of aggressive decks, a lot of things pressuring the life total, a lot of incredibly punishing permanents that if they get to untap with them, then they will probably just win and be able to snowball an advantage on the back of those cards.
Absolutely. And if we actually go down to the metagame slide for this week, we can have a little look at what we're talking about. So this is the metagame coming into week 3. Players in the VML can actually submit a new deck list every week. So one of the most fun parts for us is kind of seeing how these breakdowns change from week to week. So as you can see, 12 copies of Jeskai Laka among the 32 players. And then a smattering of the other major decks, Reclamation, Mono Red, Mono Green Stompy, interestingly, and then Bant, and then a few spices at the end. If we go to the next slide, we can actually see how that's changed as well over the 3 weeks that this season has been running. Pretty interesting to me, I think, is obviously the rise of Jeskai Fires. You can see that it's just been on the up and up, but also the collapse of cycling as a strategy.
Right.
Why do you think that might be?
A lot of that is just kind of in the fact that the deck is just, it can struggle against some of the other aggressive strategies. And now that people know it's on other people's radars, people just know how to fight against the deck better. It's less punishing, and the deck's going to struggle if people just have a cohesive game plan against it on the back of the fact that it just kind of has a low card quality.
That's true. I mean, it's definitely a Ikoria draft deck souped up.
It's this format's Teamer Adventures, right? That's all that's kind of going on there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's have a look at the first matchup that we have got this evening. It's a pretty standard one that we have been seeing throughout this format, and it's going to be Edelweiss on Mono Red Aggro with Obosh as the companion. This is the match from Division 1 that we're bringing you this evening. Edelweiss is at 1-1 currently in the season, but, early days yet. Oh,
yeah, they're less than halfway through the season, right? One loss, super fine to pick up this early in the tournament.
Absolutely. Does anything stand out to you about this list, or is it pretty stock?
For the most part, it seems pretty standard. I really like leaning into the Obosh red deck whenever you're trying to attack Jeskai Lucca. You can see a ton of these cards are things that are going to be fairly backbreaking if you get to untap with them, right? Anax, Obosh, all of these are things that are just going to put out so much damage that it's going to be hard from a deck as inconsistent as an 80-card Yorion deck to be able to draw their sweepers reliably in the early stages of the game.
Absolutely. And let's have a look then at the build of her opponent, Kisara Sara, or Sarah, as I'm going to call her because she is a friend of mine. Sorry. This is Sarah's build of Jeskai Lucca Fire's Yorion. So what's interesting about the VML obviously is that it is open deck list, so players can from week to week look at what their opponents have played in previous rounds and try to meta game, pre-sideboard a little bit against what they perceive their opponents to be on. So if we look at Sarah's build, I can immediately see that she's really loaded up on the sweepers.
Right, you can see that there are only 2-3 total copies of Agent of Treachery in the main deck, and there are some things that I think we're going to see Sarah get bitten for a little bit. We see that there are still 4 copies of Elspeth Conquers Death, despite acknowledging how necessary all of these sweepers are. Elspeth Conquers Death, not going to have a ton of reliable targets against a pile of 1-drops. That's going to be one of the first cards we're going to see coming out of the deck when we get to sideboarding. But overall, this deck's just very fine. And Deafening Clarion, 7 total sweepers in this main deck is going to do her a lot of favors.
Absolutely. So let's go down to the match and see how it plays out. All right, we are going to be watching this match from the point of view of Edelweiss. Opening hand, 5 mountains, 2 shocks. Not ideal.
No, that's just not. You need more pressure, right? Shock gets you across the finish line against something like Lucca. There aren't very many targets for it.
Right. No hesitation there. 3rd land to the bottom. Of course, never punished. Castle and Breath of the top.
Look, you put cards in your deck to draw them.
That's true. I mean, it's just my experience that mono red players have never been punished, especially when they're playing against me. We have got the turn 1 1-drop and turn 2 1-drop with haste. One of the interesting ways that this deck kind of makes up for the lack of 2 CMC spells is just play all the 1-drops.
Yeah, the triple 1-drop draws really are the bread and butter of these Obosh aggressive strategies because they do make up for the fact that you can't play 2 mana cards in your deck.
Absolutely. And we also see, interestingly, Heraldic Banner come into quite a lot of play, quite a lot of use in that sense as well, because it fills up that 3-drop slot and then you can pass turn 4 without needing to be inefficient with your mana.
No, and you are absolutely right on that front. So the banner also hits the interesting point of playing very well when your deck has loaded up on a ton of 1-drops. You get to cast your banner, immediately cast a spell, and then skip right up to your Obosh on the following turn. It just kind of does everything.
It does do everything. So we're going to see Omen of the Sea do a little bit of card selection there for Sarah. White mana has been found. So that's one of the key pieces to the Jeskai Lucca deck. It is awful when you sit there without one of your cards of mana, but Teferi Time Raveler going to go on the stack.
And I really like Edelweiss blowing this shock here because it's an efficient use of mana when Edelweiss knows that she's going to be spending all 3 of her mana for the next few turns. So it's just a way to make sure and maximize her damage output in the early stages of the game.
Absolutely. This, especially pre-board, still quite the traditional aggro versus control matchup, just trying to kill them dead as quickly as possible. All right, so Teferi is going to bounce that Grim Initiate. Whether Edelweiss does go for the 3-drop in Anax, or whether she chooses to double spell on this pretty crucial turn.
Right, and here I would be surprised if it didn't end up being Annex, just because the following turn is going to be Sarah's big Wrath turn, right? Sarah didn't have a Deafening Clarion on 3 and did choose to keep the hand, right? Kept a card on top of the Omen of the Sea before. This is a prime turn for a Solar Blaze or a Shadow the Sky, and Annex serves as a sort of Wrath protection.
Glass Casket, though, is going to be the play for Sarah, taking care of that Annex. I absolutely love Glass Casket.
Casket, for sure.
It's just so useful. Deals with Uro, just so great. It deals with Hydra Crisis. Another 1-drop off the top for Edelweiss.
Hard not to love the triple 1-drop turn here. It's a good use of mana. You get some good attacks in. You have, if you draw another land off the top, you can just activate Castle Embereth for free damage the following turn. Sarah hasn't blown a sweeper yet. You gotta maybe think the coast is clear.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see whether Edelweiss does spew, maybe being the wrong word, but just throw all these 1-drops out there, or whether she does play a little bit more conservatively. Since deck lists are open, the thought, oh, my opponent has 7 sweepers in the main, must be at the forefront of Edelweiss's mind.
And this is actually a really interesting way of hedging her bets. So we see Scorch Feather come down, but it doesn't look like Edelweiss is going to play these other 2 1-drops in order to use the Stomp part of Bone Crusher Giant to just really max out value here on that card before deploying it to the battlefield.
Yeah. And after some hesitation, that is what we're going to see. Although Fire Prophecy coming to... Fire Prophecy is such a great card.
Fire Prophecy that is literally my favorite card in Ikoria, bar none. Oh, I love cards that let you put cards back in your deck to draw other cards. They don't just have to be brainstorm,
Yeah. So we are going to see Yorion hit the battlefield pretty early stage for the Looker deck, but perhaps really valuing that ability to preordain again off the Omen of the Sea, looking for the answers that she needs.
Well, when you know that Edelweiss doesn't have any of the big powerful spells to punch through this Yorion, having a 4/5 on the battlefield against 1 creature is a pretty attractive thing.
I mean, that is true. The hidden mode on Yorion, actually a creature that is useful in combat rather than...
Big Sky Noodle.
A big Sky Noodle. No fear, however, we are... Oh, sorry, I was going to say... Tin Street Dodger there, getting in, unblockable, really enabling that spectacle cost on light up the stage.
Yeah, I actually really like this turn because Edelweiss can see that she needs some help. So she's really prioritizing putting her mana into finding access to more resources and kind of got paid in a good way there. Found that mana source she was missing, has a banner as well to roll up an Obosh on a future turn. Really, that turn was kind of mopey, but I think it progressed Edelweiss's plan in a good way.
Absolutely, really key, I think, to find that Heraldic Banner, the first pump effect, and then also...
Oh, you know what this attack means.
Does it mean it's sweeper time?
It's gotta be, right?
It's gotta be.
Heraldic Banner exiled. You don't just tap your Yorion.
I mean, it's possible that Sarah just feels so... Oh, here we go.
Oh my god.
Interesting. So it is going to be Aether Gust to put Fervent Champion back on top of the library.
If you're in Edelweiss's seat, go. Go. This is a huge sign of weakness.
Just get in there, get that pummel fit going. Got the face. So time really running out now for Sarah in this game to find that super effect.
This is a huge turnaround, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, especially with that Bone Crusher Giant on the... Although that Bone Crusher Giant goes away, right, next turn?
No, it was just Stomp.
Oh, that was... Oh, sorry. It was already stopped. I see.
Uh-oh.
Deafening Clarion, though, off the top for Sarah.
Or the high score.
Yeah, and giving lifelink, of course, to Yorion, going to gain Sarah 4 life, back up to 10. Is Sarah now peeking around the corner of the street?
That is exactly what Sarah needed to find. At first, it looked like Sarah was going to run away with it. 4/5, 15 life against one creature, and then getting knocked down to 6 out of nowhere. But really, with this Teferi coming down, getting rid of the token, the Initia left behind, it's hard not to feel like Edelweiss has a lot of work to do.
Absolutely, and actually, in a way, it kind of also shows the scariness of the red deck, that it felt like Edelweiss was so far behind, but then that one turn was, quite a big swing for the red deck there. Although, yeah, pretty sad to see Light Up the Stage being cast for 3 and only finding 2 lands.
Yeah, that is not what you want to see. There's a point where whenever it hits 1 land in a spell, you feel like you broke even. But when it hits 2 lands, that is just brutal.
I mean, you can try and... This is what I'm always trying to console myself, being like, oh, well, at least I won't draw those lands.
Yeah, well, it's because you already did. Like, what's the worst that can happen? What already happened?
Can't argue with that, Emma. I have to say, as we do see Yorion swinging in that for 4, putting Edelweiss on a 2-turn clock. Although Bone Crusher Giant is still on the field.
Oh my god!
Wait. What's happening? Wait.
Oh no, there's a Castle Ardenvale.
Oh,
there's a Castle Ardenvale back there.
I was so...
Oh my gosh.
That scared me so much.
Wow, Sarah had that rolled up and just looked so casual about it.
Absolutely. So smooth plays there by Sarah. Fooling me, certainly, for a little moment there. And I do actually also understand the wanting to attack with your own, because you once you feel like the corner is turned or maybe turned, you don't want to be janked out by the red deck.
I actually feel like Sarah has played this game very well, because she knows that Agent of Treachery is not great against a pile of 1-drops. So just knowing you need to get the game over, taking risks and applying pressure to getting the game closer to over in your favor is huge. And
look at this.
Love.
Do you know what CFC Yorion is?
I believe it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That is correct, and we are going to see Yorion swinging in that 4th lethal damage. Sarah taking down game 1 in pretty spectacular fashion by yoinking Edelweiss's Obosh there.
Preposterous magic in our first game of the night. It felt like someone different won the game for like 5 turns in a row. Both these players really pulling out the stops from the get-go. This is just great magic.
Yeah, what a roller coaster of emotions there, as we see the Bone Crusher Giants getting sided out. I believe Tybalt and Chandra were switched in there. Do you have any consideration for Grafdigger's Cage?
Yeah, so I think that's one that you're going to see go a little bit back and forth on whether or not players are bringing it in. Here, against specifically Sarah, I probably wouldn't be super interested in it. I like Cage more against the Luris decks and against the Winota decks because they're a bit faster. And just glancing over Sarah's list, you mentioned it being an open deckless format. I'm not seeing anything like Dream Trawler. And like I mentioned before in the first game, we kind of talked about it a little bit. Agent of Treachery normally is not that impactful in the matchup. So really, turning off Luca is not the fight that you always need to be fighting. If you feel like it's just so free to turn it off for a single card, then that's a reasonable way to lean. But I really could see Edelweiss going either way here.
Yeah, and it does make sense because Shock, doesn't really do a whole lot in this matchup. Sometimes the Lucker player will also side out some of the 3-mana Planeswalkers, and then your Shocks really are only going to face. We do see the Active Treason coming in as well, interestingly.
Oh, that's a saucy one, because, on one hand, these Jeskai decks don't have a ton of creatures, but there's one, and they always have it, and it has 4 power. Also, that 4 power is doubled to 8, so...
That's true. Maybe we'll see the old switcheroo in this matchup with the Obosh powering out 8 damage from Yorion. But
if Edelweiss had an Active Treason last game, I think she would have won.
That's true. Active Treason just really giving that little bit of reach that's kind of maybe sometimes slightly missing from this deck. So 2/1 drops again in the opener, and then 2 copies of Annex Hardened in the Forge in hand for Edelweiss. Pretty interesting to see here what Sarah's strategy is on the draw. Presumably a lot of the Sarah's deck has a lot of interaction, like a lot of interaction in it.
Yeah, this is certainly a matchup where, just glancing over Sarah's sideboard, I'm not positive what she's going to be adding to her deck that wasn't already there. There's 1 Shatter, a Glass Casket, and an Aether Gust. But other than that, it doesn't feel like there's a whole lot going. You had mentioned this being an open decklist format, being able to look at the history of your opponent, and I feel like Sarah's really taken advantage of that and sort of pre-boarded for the red matchup.
Absolutely, and just to give you a little bit more context, Edelweiss also did play in Season 1, and in fact, throughout Season 1 and for the first 2 weeks of Season 2, Edelweiss has been playing low-curve aggro decks. So it was a pretty safe-ish assumption on Sarah's part, I think, in this week's matchup. Edelweiss had been on cycling before, as we see Deafening Clarion take out those small creatures, but Annex doing his job, making 4 saves.
Oh, how do you feel about Castle Embreth?
Oh, so gross. So gross as we see Sarah go all the way down to 4 from that one
Sarah
attack.
needs a sweeper right now, or it's over.
Right. Okay, Fires of Invention. Does she have it? Shatter the Sky. Oh my god. It's going to come down. And take care of those 4/1/1s, but it was a pretty dodgy situation there for Sarah if she did not have that second sweeper.
And it looks like Edelweiss is weighing between either casting Obosh or the 1-drop plus Annex. I would lean towards the not Obosh cards, just because it's better against the umpteenth sweeper, but I think there's merit to both of them.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me that you're getting the creatures down, and then if you do untap with them, then getting Obosh down for the kill seems like the line that Edelweiss also agrees with. Let's see, Sarah, despite those 2 sweepers, still at a pretty precarious life total. Omen of the Sea coming down, perhaps digging for the third board wipe here.
Oh, no, you hate to see it.
Yeah, that is the last thing you want to see when your opponent casts the Preordain, is top draw.
Oh, this is so close. Sarah has so many cards in hand and so few life points.
That is true. And if we think back to the sideboard, Edelweiss actually sided out all of the Bonecrusher Giants and most of the Shocks.
Chandra counts?
Chandra does count. That's true. Chandra will provide 2 damage with haste, and then I guess with a pump effect in Chandra, that is a pretty...
Oh, that's not a very good second spell.
Yeah, it's just going to be Glasket there. I'm just going to say Glasket now, since that's apparently what we're doing. Taking care of Annex. Single lonely Grim Initiate on the battlefield. Going to be joined by Big Daddy Obosh.
Hate that. Don't want to call Obosh that.
But it's such a spiky, cute. Oh.
That's not a reason to call it that.
All right. So we are going to see Shatter the Sky take care of both creatures there, and Yorion coming down, gonna look at those two omens of the sea.
Is it active treason time?
Wow. We put them in our deck to draw them, right? That's what you said.
Absolutely.
So this is the thing with these aggro decks. Like, I'm quite a control player, and the reason that I can't stand playing aggro is I just never feel like I'm in control of my own destiny. Looker gonna come down and plus instead of the normal minus. Makes a lot of sense, I guess, if you don't want to lose that Yorion.
Big draw step coming up for Edelweiss here.
Absolutely. Let's see what comes off the top.
Oh, no.
Unfortunately, another very beautiful full-out mountain.
Well,
do it.
Honestly, it can't be that beautiful to Edelweiss right now. That is a heartbreaker.
Right. Any haste creature, Chandra, active treason. There was so many live draws in the deck still. Birth of Malaise is now coming down. Eventually gonna make another blocker and gain a little bit of life. But it's like if you're in Edelweiss's seat here, like it must be such a sweat. This is what I can't handle. The sweat. Like just the every single card. Is it gonna happen? Is it not? I just don't have the blood pressure to be able to deal with that.
Is Sarah scrying bottom to try and hit with Yorion?
Do you mean hit with Lucca?
Lucca, excuse me. Yes, thank you.
Potentially, although I can't quite remember whether Sarah did have Dream Trawlers in the sideboard or not.
There are not, no.
Okay, so.
Oh my God! Look at that! That does it.
That does it. That's it.
Oh my God! Fervent Champion off the top from Edelweiss, taking us to a game 3 here in round 1. Oh my God!
I thought it was over. I thought it was done.
No, absolutely not. Edelweiss really fighting for it. God, Sarah kind of running on fumes there at the end, and it looked like she had turned a corner. God. 2 games in a row of this. I'm expecting big things from this third one.
Absolutely. I hope to see fireworks here. Fervent Champion, Mr. Javier Dominguez himself, coming in to ruin the party for Sarah, but save the day for Edelweiss.
Look, they don't call him the champion for nothing.
That's true. That's how you get good. Just show up at the right time.
I mean, yeah, that's life right there. That's just good life advice.
Absolutely. Just interesting to look at what else is in this sideboard. Blazing Volley in the sideboard of this red deck. Obviously not for this matchup, maybe, but pretty interesting to see that as a strategy, perhaps against the cycling deck.
Interesting choice to see Edelweiss change out Scorch Bitters and then bring in Shocks on the draw. It looks like Edelweiss is kind of leaning a little bit more into actually just getting 2 points out of Shock, where something like Scorch Bitter might be a little bit more awkward when you're on the draw. Like, if you have it on turn 2, it might just get eaten by a Deafening Clarion, and it's not going to line up very well on the draw against something like Omen of the Sun. So I actually think this is a very heads-up thing from Edelweiss. I very much like that plan.
Wow, that was well spotted there, Emma. I had not noticed, but so thank you for pointing that out. So this hand from Edelweiss, no 1-drops, a handful of 3-drops, but pretty powerful spells.
Yeah, this hand has a lot of staying power. I'm a little worried that it's not going to get Sarah to a low enough range for these cards to actually do what you want them to be doing. But I don't think this hand is bad. It's definitely the kind of hand where it's like the worst hand you'll ever keep. You know what I mean?
Right. But definitely a keep.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really justify mulliganing it.
Absolutely. And not what you want to see from the other side either. Birth of Miletus on turn 2, making that 0-4 wall before any of your creatures can even get in. Chandra is going to come down and 0, making those two little hasty little elemental guys. Omen of the Sun though. The great answer there to the Chandra, taking out both of those 1/1s and the 1/1s obviously kill themselves. Sorry. And providing a little bit of board presence. I'm really in love with the inclusion of Omen of the Sun in these decks.
The card barely does so many things.
It really does, and just like you see here, gives you so much game against opposing planeswalkers. It plays at instant speed, obviously gives the fuel for the Lucker. Just does everything.
Yeah, we really need to see something from Edelweiss this next turn in order to catch up. We see Sarah threatening to next turn Yorion away 2 Omens and Fires and just get to cast 3 5-mana spells in the same turn.
Wow. I mean,
it's not easy to come back from.
No. Well, let's see how it does play out for Edelweiss. So step 1, make those 2 1/1s get in. Valuing the spectacle cost on that Light of the Stage. Light of the Stage is going to go looking, oh my gosh.
Ooh, little bit of a misstep from Edelweiss there, playing a land before. Ugh.
Yeah, you hate to see it. 2 mountains off the Light of the Stage, and unfortunately the land drop having already been made that turn. But Annex is going to come down, 4/3 body, pretty big presence on this board. Let's see whether Sarah, there's step number 1 for Sarah, the 5th land.
Oh, Lord.
Oh, no. And then, yeah, the Omen of the Sun, the second Omen of the Sun there coming down, making another 2 1/1s, and then Yorion going to flicker all 3 of those Omens. Not going to flicker the Fires this time. Maybe there isn't a spell to handily cast at this time. And as we move to the end step, we're going to see 2 more Omen of the Sun activations.
Yeah, hard not to imagine things just kind of breaking in Sarah's way at this point. This is a really, really tough spot for the red deck to kind of come back from. Edelweiss doesn't have a ton of great options in terms of catch-up cards here.
Right. I mean, if only she had sided in the Blazing Barleys, Emma. It is pretty unfortunate to be in this position, facing down the 8 1/1s and the huge army there for Sarah. Heraldic Banner going to come down now, adding another pump effect.
Without something like Embercleave, this is just such a rough spot.
Right, and with Sarah sitting at 28, it's not like as you said, this hand probably on the low end of the hands that you would keep from this deck, and precisely for the reason that you said, which is that Edelweiss wasn't able to get in those early points of damage that could put Sarah within range of something like an Act of Treason or similar.
And this is kind of what you hope doesn't happen with the Yorion deck, but can, right? It's not that these draws aren't possible. You kind of bring the aggro deck hoping the Yorion deck, it does have a fail rate, and you hope that it suffers it, or it draws its combo half when the combo doesn't line up very well against a bunch of efficient spells.
Absolutely. So, Light Up the Stage, going to go looking. Grafdigger's Cage, unfortunately, not going to be enough at this point. As we see Sarah cycle a Triumph at the end step. I absolutely love the Triumphs, Emma. I think they're my favorite card in Ikoria. I mean, cards. Looker hitting the battlefield, and it is going to be a concession from Edelweiss. So a pretty one-sided game 3 there for the match, but excellent plays overall. And we had some real swings in games 1 and 2.
Yeah, absolutely. I really liked how both of those players navigated their games. It's rough that our third game had to go that way, but the first 2 games were such back and forth affairs. I was really impressed by the way that they went through things. And we cut here to our winner, Sarah, really just kind of showing off the upside of playing in an open deck format, right?
Yeah, absolutely. This little jostle, this little dance that we do every week, is pretty exciting. I mean, so when the metagame is a little bit more diverse, it's actually, there's a little bit more to it as well, because obviously people are switching from deck to deck. Lately, the dominance of the Laka deck kind of, I think, did railroad a few people into just choosing the best deck. But certainly, especially towards the end of last season, I was stressing out every single week about what I was going to submit, thinking, is my opponent likely to switch? Did they win with their deck last week? And all those other considerations. So that was our first match of the evening. We saw Sarah take it down in 3 against Edelweiss. If you, dear viewer, or any of your friends would like to join the VML, you can do so. So VML is brought to you by Swigway Gaming and Aspirant CCG. You can follow both of those organizations on Twitter. You can also type !join VML. I don't know if that command still works, I've just realized. You may be able to type !join VML for the link. And just reminds you that VML is also sponsored by Card Market, which is Europe's largest marketplace for Magic singles. They are pretty cool. Should we have a look at the next matchups, Emma?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let's have us a look.
Right. So the next matchup we've got here is going to be, the first player is going to be Becky Bear. Becky is actually another one of the casters here on the VML, and if you did tune in last week, you would have heard her, and if you will tune in next week, you'll hear her again. Her lovely dulcet tones. And she is in chat right now.
Oh, yeah, just trying to keep things under control, holding it down where we cannot.
Absolutely. So Becky this week is going to be the Division 2's chosen Jeskai Laka Fires representative. This build, a little bit more of a standard build than Sarah's list.
Yeah, and, there's certainly a point where a lot of the reason that players are bringing these decks to the event is because they know it's the best thing. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I got a lot of respect for that to a point, right? Your tournament's going to be long. You don't necessarily need to be the absolute #1 person in your division, but you do need a solid finish. And just bringing the best deck every week is probably going to get you there.
Right, absolutely. The way that divisions work, Emma, is that so the top 2 players in each division automatically qualify.
Right.
And then the next 4 competitors in terms of standings, regardless of what division they're in, will qualify. So,
absolutely.
So yeah, as you say, you don't need to win every single week, but bringing the best deck every week is a pretty solid plan. And as Becky says there, her strategy for the matchup, the plan is just always have it.
Whoa, are you not going to say the emoticon? Are you not going to give us your best uwu?
Okay, all right. Look around some agents. Nab my opponent's good stuff. Uwu. That was so bad.
Look, you're just out here doing your best, and I respect the hell out of you for it.
I'm being a human with human facial features and not assy characters as my facial features. I can't do that emote quite as well as it's represented on the screen there. You're just going to have to imagine my face doing it. Let's have a look at Becky's opponent's deck list. This is a spicer, Emma. So Becky this week is against Natalie. Natalie's screen name is Big Stuff Cat, so when you see the match on screen, that's the screen name you're going to see. But we will be calling them Natalie. Natalie this week is running a Hushbringer, Croxa, Lurus, Mardu Sacrifice.
Big fan of this, actually. So this is exactly the thing I was talking about going into the show, about having a bunch of incredibly punishing permanents. This is a lot of things that will just put the game out of reach if they get to untap with them. Natalie has kind of identified one of the weaknesses of the Yorion deck, and this is sort of what we saw in the first couple of games in our last match, is that Yorion does have to spend some time developing. So if you can just get down an early copy of Kroxa, I can see that absolutely stealing games for Natalie here.
Absolutely. And Natalie did, in fact, send me a very long, very interesting content piece about why they built this deck and how they built it. And one of the things they said was, Hushbringer and Kroxa is somewhat of a meme, but that doesn't mean it's not real.
Hey, you don't have to let your memes be dreams.
That's true. You can try and realize them on the page. Oh, and also they did say that they accidentally submitted 61 cards, but in the age of Yorion, who's gonna care in the age of 80 card decks?
I thought it was intentional. I think Yorion's gonna launch us into a new age of Magic where we don't wring our hands at everyone with 60 to 65 cards. We just say, you know what? Maybe all of these are good cards. Natalie chose to put some good ones in their deck. And you know what? I want to see what they're bringing to the table.
All right. Well, let's get down to the match and find out. Okay, so we are going to see this from the point of view of Becky, I believe. Sorry, it was just the MTGA names were not quite matched up with our players' screen names, but Becky is the player on Jeskai Looker. Getting the emotes there in early. What's your stance on MTGA emotes?
I basically don't use them except against Canister.
Okay.
against Canister, you got to do it to him.
That makes a lot of sense. I am very anti-emote. If my opponent says anything, I will mute them immediately because I'm a coward. We are going to see Hunted Witness there coming down on turn 1 for Natalie. The follow-up, Priest of the Forgotten Gods, pretty powerful spells coming down there.
Yeah, this is the ideal start for Natalie.
Absolutely. We will see Narset though coming down on turn 3. Pretty nice curve out there for the Looker deck as well. Fires of Invention is going to be the choice. No second red source, so pretty understandable to not get Looker there off that.
Well, the thing about Fires of Invention is I don't think you got to sweat the colored mana too much.
That is true. That is true. Priest of the Forgotten Gods is going to get rid of that 0-4 blocker. Unfortunately, cannot draw a card, of course, because of Narset's static ability.
A year later, and it's still getting all of us.
It's just so annoying. Just so annoying. But yeah, Fires of Invention going to come down on turn 4, Omen of the Sun, making those 2 tokens. So now we begin to see this Lurrus deck kind of come into play, because with Lurrus you can cast 1 permanent out of your graveyard every turn, and this deadweight doing double duty there, getting cast twice in 1 turn. Pretty cool.
And look, see, this is exactly what we were talking about going into the match. Becky hasn't been able to do anything about Natalie's permanence here. It hasn't answered this Priest or this Lurrus, and it's really coming back to bite her.
Absolutely, and no 5th land for Becky, but Teferi Time Raveler is going to come down. Priest of the Forgotten Gods unfortunately doesn't quite Edict Planeswalkers. There is Castle Artemis. So combo almost assembled for Becky.
There we could have seen Becky be a bit more greedy and bounce the Priest with the plan of Elspeth conquering death on the Lurrus. But I really like the more conservative line that she went with here that kind of was just playing it a bit safer.
Yeah, and it does make a lot of sense because allowing Lurrus to get that free value every turn can snowball pretty quickly.
Right.
As we do see, Lyris is going to join the party yet again.
Lyris is a party animal. Everyone's known it since college. Just really, they don't call it the Dream Den for nothing, you know?
I see. The Dream Den was like the frat house that Lyris lived in. And then when Lyris runs for president in like 2032 or whatever, there are going to be all these like incriminating images of Lyris in the frat house.
Jesus.
Come with me on this fantasy.
Ooh, look at this mid-combat trickery from Natalie. I love how they're playing this.
Absolutely. Super cool to see that that Priest of the Forgotten Gods getting to activate and doing the thing. The second Shark Typhoon is going to be cycled 4-0, and Teferi is going to go down to this onslaught by these little soldiers.
Yeah,
Hunted Witness is
just saying she needs help.
Absolutely. This Hunted Witness has done so much in the Lyris deck. I'm really impressed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Always loved a good Doom Traveler.
It is really cool that they do try and bring these effects in and try and make support for these various archetypes that wouldn't necessarily have all the pieces. We are going to see Elspeth Conquer's Death come down and take out that Lyris. Oh, you're now going to flicker the fires and the two omens.
Love an incredibly fair card like Yorion.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Nothing wrong with it at all.
Your play-by-play, you say what just happened.
Well, Yorion is gonna flicker that omen of the sea. We are gonna see the final combo piece. Look at Coppercoat Outcast. Scry to the top and drawn into the hand for Becky. Ready to start nabbing some things. Ooh woo. I tried really hard.
Far, and in the end, it mattered a lot to me.
Okay, well, I'm glad it matters to somebody else. We do see a Priest of the Forgotten Gods activation, only able to take down one of those soldier tokens. And Hushbringer. Oh my god, Emma, this Hushbringer.
Right on time.
Oh my goodness.
What you want to bet Natalie's been saving that because it turns off Doom Traveler. Or, excuse me, Hunted Witness.
Hunted Witness. That is true.
I'll bet they were sandbagging it this whole time.
That is, I mean, very, very
heads up. Incredible.
Very heads up. Able to manage those competing effects in their deck. Obviously, this is their baby. They did build it, so makes a lot of sense. Elspeth Conquer's Death doing absolutely nothing now against this Lyris deck. And Looker, essentially also a dead card, being unable to. Well, I mean, it could bring in an Agent of Treachery, but it would just be a 2/3.
Hey, it has 2 and 3. That's like 5.
Is it? Unfortunately, Hushbringer is going to stop that Maya Triton from doing its thing, but no worries there. Priest of the Forgotten Gods gonna keep activating, keep chipping away at this army of 1/1s. It's just endless. It's just an endless churn of tiny bodies.
I actually like activating Castle Ardenvale over Vantress to just kind of preserve battlefield on Becky's part. Here, Becky kind of realizes that prolonging the game is going to favor her in the long run.
Oh.
We found it.
That makes a lot of sense now. Teferi coming back from that first ECD going off, and then clearing the way, clearing out that Hushbringer and making it back on again for Lucca to do his little magic trick.
The ooh-woo, if you will.
If you will. You know, some might describe it as that.
Some may.
Some people.
There are those.
It has been described thus in the past. So if you're on Natalie's side of the battlefield, what's really the plan? Like, what are the big kind of plays that you can hope to try and turn this around with?
So the big thing here is just trying to actually outmuscle Becky. So here, ultimately, so Becky was only able to steal one of their lands, right? That's not that powerful of a turn. And Agent of Treachery being a 2/3, not that impressive. So I think Natalie's best path through this is just to create enough power to actually close the door. This Priest of the Forgotten Gods has gotten Becky down to 12.
Absolutely. I mean, that life loss, like at the beginning you think, oh, it's just, 2 life. It doesn't really matter that much, but it does add up, especially when, as you say, the priest has gone unanswered for so long. This Shatter the Sky, though, probably going to have something to say about that.
That's going to be a rough one. I have a hard time imagining that doesn't seal it in Becky's favor.
It is interesting because all these creatures going to the graveyard, if Natalie is able to find another copy of Fiend Artisan off the top, it is going to be a pretty big monster. But
with a Lucca hanging out on the battlefield, it's hard to imagine that Natalie would get to keep it for very long.
That is a very good point. Oh, just the thought of casting a Fiend Artisan that's an 8/8 or something, and then having an Agent of Treachery is just so sad.
Hey, bright side, it'll only be, a 1/1 or a 2/2 when it's on Becky's side.
Well, that is true.
Good grief.
Oh, no. And then, yep. The yoinking. Oh, and the...
oh my God.
Are we going to see it?
Becky's won the big prize.
And what is the big prize, Emma? Is it 6 cards off the top?
6 fresh cards off the top. Activates Agent of Treachery to draw 3 new cards.
Oh my God, this is so disgusting. What's the most cards you've seen drawn off this Agent of Treachery?
I don't know.
Because earlier on today, I drew 15 cards.
What? How?
I had 5 Agents of Treachery on my side of the battlefield.
Did you steal an Agent of Treachery?
I did, yeah. And then actually, very luckily, my opponent landed a Narset the next turn, or I would have decked myself in my 80 card deck. We are just going to see a couple of lands coming down. Kind of going through the formalities at this point. Omen of the Sun making a couple of tokens. Pretty unfortunately empty-handed there for Natalie. Just that Gutter Bones, which I believe is in the graveyard.
But there is a Priest of the Forgotten Gods on the battlefield, and with Gutter Bones being in the graveyard, I don't think Natalie's completely out of this. I think they have outs. If they can just find a creature, chain a few things together, start activating Priest, bring back Gutter Bones.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Natalie probably maybe with a little mind as to the clock, and also, seeing their percentage points in this game drop down pretty low, is going to scoop it up, and we are going to go to sideboard.
Yeah, a brick there more or less sealed it. That was Natalie's turn. They needed to draw something immediately.
Absolutely. So interestingly, we are going to see Dream Trawler come in. Just the 1 copy though. The 4 glass caskets. Oh no, just making room for the both Dream Trawlers there.
That seemed like a case where Becky had more cards to cut than she wanted to bring in, and was just kind of seeing what could be justifiably in the deck.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to pull up Natalie's sideboard because it'd be interesting to see what they've got going on.
I imagine Drillbit is the big thing that they're looking to be bringing in out of their sideboard here. Likely another copy of Wishbringer. I think you can make a case for D-Spark, but I'm a little bit less positive on that one. I think for the most part, we're just going to see Natalie trying to get deadweights out of their deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Those deadweights taking out 1/1s, not particularly impressive in this matchup. Yeah, the 4 drill bits, I believe Natalie did tell me that those were a pretty important part of the plan. Let's see whether they did manage to find them. Oh, yep. Interestingly, Elspeth Conquers Death still in the deck for Becky.
That's just, it's sort of like the active treason situation from last match. There aren't really that many things that cost that much in Natalie's deck by virtue of their companion. But you know their companion's going to come out every game, and Elspeth Conquers Death is a good way to make that happen. Or to at least have an answer rolled up.
Absolutely. And Natalie's turn here, perhaps also another effect of the open deck list. Natalie knows that no Deafening Clarion to be scared of, so...
I believe there are 2 out of the sideboard.
Oh, my bad. I must have missed
just
that one.
Fine. But Natalie calling the bluff, getting paid for it, and shoving into the red zone against Becky.
Absolutely.
Has an Omen of the Sun, but really that only answers one of the gutter bones, since Natalie is just able to get them back here.
Right, gutter bones, one of those like really innocuous little cards that you don't really necessarily think too much about until it just relentlessly comes at you and refuses to go away. Becky did find the Fire's Invention there, and Narset as well, the follow-up. Going digging for that sweeper. Easy game.
To quote Narset, seek and find.
Seek and find. Oh my god. Do you know what these Planeswalker quotes are?
What?
Do you know these Planeswalker quotes by heart, Emma?
I do. I play too much Arena with the sound on.
My favorite is Teferi. He's like always so smug and yet so like unsure of himself at the same time. I really relate to that. We are going to see the Shock Typhoon that cycled, perhaps to try and find that 5th land, unable to find it. However, fresh Narset coming down. Oh, no, same Narset coming down, sorry. We are going to see Lurrus, though, coming to join the party, ready to play all of those little 1-drops back out of the graveyard. Ooh. Now, Dream Trawler is one of the pretty important cards in this matchup for Becky. Interestingly, Dream Trawler gotten a lot better in this deck because of all the tokens and, you know, the protection against these edict effects.
Right, just having ways to actually protect your creature from your opponent at all times is great. And this being a tokens deck as well just gives a good bit of insulation against one of the only ways to really answer a Dream Trawler.
Absolutely. We are going to see that ECD. So Narset did find Looker off the top that had been scribed there, but ECD is going to be the follow-up instead of Look himself.
Good show of patience on Becky's part, not just firing off the Clarion there.
Oh, definitely. I'm very trigger happy with these things, definitely very patient play there.
And I think Becky's going to get rewarded, because that would have been a great turn for Becky to cast a Deafening Clarion if she had access to it. So Natalie's probably thinking to themselves, this is a turn, I need to get a battlefield going, I need to get this game over, and Becky is about to slam the door shut.
Ouch. As you say, Deafening Clarion coming down, slamming that door. Shock Typhoon just going to make a little baby shark there. No. As soon as I said it, I was like, oh no.
What have I done?
What did I do?
I hope the mightiest of linguinis is there, for I am channeling her.
Okay. I thought that maybe this one week I would have a little respite, But no, it looks like every single time I'm casting for the rest of this standard season with Shark Typhoon in it, this is going to happen.
And that was match 2 going to Becky.
Yeah.
Caster of the VML.
Caster of the VML, Becky Bear there, taking down that match 2 in 2-0. Pretty dominating performance there by the Laka deck in this matchup as well.
Yeah, game 1 felt like it was really close. A lot of things kind of broke Natalie's way that needed to break their way, and then Laka did Laka things, right?
Right. Absolutely. And game 2, Natalie not really able to get going there with the engine. So interesting. Now we've seen 2 Jeskai Laka deck versus not Jeskai Laka deck versus these kind of low curve creature decks, and we are seeing the Laka deck come out on top. A lot of card selection. I think a lot of these sweepers, even in Becky's build without quite as many answers as Sarah's build earlier, still able to consistently find the answers that she needs.
So does that mean we're done watching Laka for the night?
Unfortunately, we do have one more Laka. We do have one more Laka to bring you, but this is a very, very interesting matchup that I've been looking forward to all week. Let's have a look at the players. So this is from Division 3, which is actually my division of the VML. Pretty stacked division, as we do see. So this matchup is going to be Jen Krotz. Jen is going to be the designated Jeskai Laka Fires brackets Yorion representative of Division 3. And her build, I think, a pretty stock list. A little concession maybe to the matchup in the full 4 copies of Mystical Dispute in the sideboard. And you'll see why when we go down to her opponent's list. This week, Jen is playing Bloody Mess Jess. Jess on Mono Blue Flash.
Oof, this is a deck close to my heart. Big fan of the Mono Blue tempo decks.
You were quite involved when Autumn made their very famous victory with the Mono Blue deck. Is that right?
That's complicated. I don't feel like I can really take the credit from their genius on that one. That was their called shot for the most part. But in the time leading up to it, I did play a little bit with the deck. Really enjoyed playing with it. It was great on the weekend, and it feels like Jess is kind of checking a lot of the same boxes that deck did with this.
Absolutely. Sea Dasher Octopus being, the real addition from Ikoria that I think has made this build possible. Pairing really well with those small flyers, able to get in, and then the rest of the flash strategy. Cunning Nightbonder, of course, the new 2-drop from the deck, and interesting to see the mono blue build being favored here over something like the Simic flash lists we've been seeing.
Yeah, Sea Dasher Octopus was an incredible tool for this deck in particular because it helps make up for the fact that this deck is a little bit lower in terms of card quality than where you generally are going to want to be in Constructed. But rather than actually trying to win on the back of card quality, it's capitalizing on leveraging mana advantages and just being able to trade more cheap, efficient spells for the opponent's bigger, more powerful cards. And just having a raw quantity of cards on the back of something like Sea Dasher Octopus is what makes that a viable strategy.
Absolutely. And we do see Jess here saying that she really needs to establish that early board presence and then sit back on these multiple counter spells in the deck and try and take the victory that way. Also, something pretty cool to highlight is that Jen and Jess are both pretty well-known players in the Canadian and also generally the North American kind of MTG grinder scene. Both of them have a GP top 8, which I think is really cool. Super impressive that these two players are clashing this week on the stream.
Oh, absolutely. This is a real feature match if I ever saw one. I am excited to see how they actually approach things in these games and see what sort of mind games they try to play with one another.
Absolutely. Let's go down the match. All right, so we are going to be watching this from the point of view of Bloody Mess Jess. Okay, 0 lander opening hand. That one's going to have to be thrown back.
Will not be able to cast spells very well.
No. 2 lander though, perfectly reasonable. Essence Capture going to be at the bottom of the deck. Very, very heads up play there because Essence Capture obviously not having very many targets in the Laka deck.
Yeah, game 1 may actually end up proving rough for the mono blue flash deck, despite being a good deck in the heads-up matchup, or just fundamentally being favored against the big, clunky sort of mid-range control decks. But post-board, there are a lot of tools that Jess will have to work with to kind of get things like Essence Capture and Stone Coil Serpent out of the deck.
Absolutely. Stone Coil Serpent is going to come down on turn 1, chipping in there for 1 damage, and then now we see this flash kind of strategy coming in as we're going to see a lot of turns being passed with open mana from here on in. Glass Casket is going to be the play for Jen, and we do actually have a little correction. Oh.
So hitting a copy of Stone Coil Serpent with Glass Casket is incredible with Yorion, because now you can blink the Glass Casket later on in the game and get a second creature with it.
That makes a lot of sense. Wow, I hadn't even really thought of that, but yeah, pretty big coup there for Jen, able to get that X creature or X spell 0/0 creature out of there. Cunning Night Bonder is going to be the play in response to Teferi Time Raveler. Is Teferi still as much of a roadblock for these flash decks as he has traditionally been?
So one of the nice things that it has going for it in this particular case, or the blue deck has, is that there are so many more creatures than there have been in previous iterations of Flash. So the fact that Jess actually has more options for pressuring Teferi means this isn't quite the lights out hate card that it has been against some of these Flash decks before.
So we are going to see that Brineborn Cutthroat reset, but Teferi is going to go down, of course, to the 2/2. Just a quick correction there on Jess's slide. It did actually say that Jess was at 101, but Jess is actually at 2-0 in the VML currently. So let's see whether she can keep her undefeated record going. Second copy of Teferi Time Raveler now for Jen. Brineborn Cutthroat gonna go get down there first to take full advantage of this mystical dispute.
Ooh.
Interestingly enough, a Sea Dasher Octopus is going to be played there in the end step, not as a mutate, but just as its own cute little self.
Yeah, it does. We don't see very many blockers from Jen's side, so here you kind of just want to have the extra body, the extra pressure.
Absolutely, and Jen, in pretty dire straits, needing to find a shatter, does find the shatter. Unfortunately, the mystical dispute that Jess had did go on countering that Teferi in the previous turn, so those creatures are going to say goodbye, but never fear. Shark Typhoon is here.
Yeah, this is actually a pretty good spot for Jess. We see Jess just putting Jen down to 4.
Yeah, and this 3/3 a huge threat on the board. Further threats in hand, that Brazen Borrower in particular I'm looking at, and of course the second copy of Shark Typhoon. From Jen's side of the battlefield, no second sweeper or sorcery speed answer at least.
Not even playing Yorion out. It's hard not to sniff out a Shark Typhoon here.
That does appear to be the case. Well, I mean, let's see what happens. But yeah, when your opponent passes with all of their mana at 4 life, generally something is up, and this is the thing that's up. So Shark Typhoon is going to come down, but Brazen Borrower going to do its thing, pettily thieving away the the 4/4 Shark token, and that looks like it's going to be lethal. So a pretty impressive performance there by the Mono Blue list.
Yeah, that was an incredibly commanding show of this blue deck. It felt like in a lot of cases, Kratz's deck just didn't quite fire on all cylinders. Didn't see the tokens come out to stop those early Brineborn Cutthroats. Only saw one sweeper, a lot of wheel spinning, and that's exactly the kind of draw that Jess is going to be able to capitalize on.
Absolutely. Really punishing deck for that kind of slower, trying to set up type draw. We do see some of those copies of Essence Capture come out, the Stonecoil Serpents, Gadwicks, the more awkward, bulkier spells coming out.
Exactly. When interviewing Jess, she had previously said that being able to tap out for those cards is just not particularly realistic when Jen's cards are so punishing. So it's not surprising to see Gadwick, Stonecoil Serpent, sit this one out.
Absolutely. A pretty sweet 7-hand there. Oh, and perfect. Although we see Spectral Sailor not being played out there on turn 1, interestingly. Why do you think that might be?
Because it is not Jin's end step yet.
Oh my god, it has. I'm so sorry. Oh my god.
I thought we were making a joke
course.
together. I thought we were just making it cool. Just in the future, I'll try and say it dry, and like you say it dry back, and we'll do it. We're a team now. We gotta get through this.
All right. I hear you. I'm with you. I'm on it. I knew that. Spectral Sailor is going to join the party, of course, at the correct time in the end step of Jen. And is going to fly over there straight into the waiting arms of a Shark token.
And just missing the land drop here is actually pretty brutal. That's a bad exchange followed by a missed land drop. Jess really needs to find some mana off the top here, or else she's not really going to be able to leverage any sort of mana advantage against Kratz. And that's really the bread and butter of what Jess's deck does.
Right. So, I mean, this Omen of the Sea in hand, number 1 priority, looking for mana. No lands off the scry. Be interesting to see whether these cards go to the bottom. They do. Can I just say, excellent sleeve choices by both competitors in this matchup.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, Sea Dash Octopus was the draw off Omen of the Sea, and then the probably single copy of Gadwick that is left in the deck was the draw off the draw step. So unfortunately, still no third land. Just gonna pass the turn here. A pretty desperate situation now to find this land.
Yeah, really just needs to get something going, needs to develop more onto the battlefield instead of just sitting back like this. The longer the game goes, the better things are going to get for Jen. Cards like Quench are just going to stop functioning at a certain point.
Absolutely. So it's interesting to me here that Jess does decide to go for the Spectral Sailor and not the Cunning Nightbonder. As Cunning Nightbonder does give a discount on flash spells.
Yeah, I imagine the big reason for that is just trying to get an evasive flyer.
Right. Makes a lot of sense. So Omen of the Sun is going to come down before blockers, but that 0/4 wall going to just jump in front of this Brineborn Cutthroat. The Jen, however, having no mana problems, happily developing away. If you're so for Jess here, I mean, if you don't draw the land, or if you're in this kind of situation yourself, like what's the right, I mean, not necessarily even game plan, but like psychological attitude should you employ in these situations?
Basically, the best thing that you can do for yourself is try to figure out, if things break your way, how do you imagine a game that you have won, that started in the way this game has, and you have to try and just follow through the steps that get you from where you are now across the finish line. And it kind of feels like that's what's going on here. We saw Spectral Sailor come down last turn, and now the Sea Dasher Octopus mutating onto Spectral Sailor this turn in order to try and actually just gain some sort of momentum here.
Yeah, and actually very pretty good cautious play there by counting the number of lands Jen had available and figuring out that Sea Dasher Octopus would in fact have been eaten by any shark that would be cycled there. So not attacking that with the Spectral Sailor wearing an octopus hat. Glass Casket is going to go on the stack. You'd imagine that Jess would fire off the negate here to protect her creatures.
Yeah, there's certainly a point where you need to actually be able to try and interact with the things that Jen is presenting. I almost think you just have to let it go, because if you go to counter this and then just Jen slams a Luca, you literally lose the game. Whereas this is just a setback and not literally losing the game.
Okay, interesting. So that's actually really, really interesting to me, because I think for me, if it were me, I would zero hesitation just slam the negate. But as you say, that Glass Casket isn't what's killing us or what's going to kill Jess potentially here, and it would be, the Looker. And interestingly, actually, Jen's side of the battlefield, even though she's in a pretty good position in relation to mana, there's actually not that much going on in terms of, planeswalkers or other impactful spells.
Both players are just sort of developing here. And one thing that Jen mentioned when we talked to her about how she felt about this matchup is that she just wants to be able to make land drops and invalidate Jess's more conditional counter magic. So when Jen's only taking 1-2 points a turn, Jen's sitting at 15. She's under no pressure to actually commit anything right now. The onus of action at this point in the game is actually on Jess to try and make Jen operate in a way that Jen can't. But that just isn't the case right now.
Right, so Jen is going to try and go for it this turn with the Looker, eating that negate. No counter battle over that particular Looker. Jen's list, of course, is a little bit lighter on counter spells than Jess's mono blue flash list. But as we did see in terms of metagame and preparation, Jen did bring the full 4 copies of Mystical Dispute, when some of these lists play 0 copies of Mystical Dispute. So really interesting to see. That Brineborn Cutthroat, Emma, is huge.
Oh yeah, it is. It is one stabby boy.
One giant stabby boy. Okay, so the second copy of Looker now.
All right, time for another check.
So this Quench here, looking pretty upset at the 3 extra mana available for Jen. Looker is going to resolve, and we are going to see that shark being exiled, but Petty Theft going to bounce that shark token and fizzle this activation.
Maybe.
Possibly.
There's the dispute.
Oh, the dispute. And unfortunately for Jess, that Quench in hand still not going to do the job.
Oh my god, and it hit a unbelievable. Is that good enough?
I mean,
I'm actually not sure.
No. It's hard to say because this Brineborn Cutthroat is really big. Like, huge. And we are going to see Gadwick. Oh, this is interesting. Gadwick being played for 0.
Oh my god.
Specifically for the tap ability. And yeah, Fairy Vandal going on the stack. Gadwick tapping down that Dream Trawler, and Jen being at 11 life. And this is lethal.
Wow, what a turnaround. Just expertly navigated on Jess's part.
Unbelievable. Jess was at 2 lands for so many turns, unable to cast, her entire grip of spells.
Wow.
And
we're looking at our list right now. We see this wall of counter magic. We see neutralizing 3 different columns. Just kind of thinking it to be a major role player. Just countered 1 spell that second game.
Right.
There was a negate that happened.
Right. And really, it was really these creatures that did the job in the end, and not necessarily the counter magic as you would have expected.
Brineborn Cutthroat. How about Brineborn Cutthroat? How do you feel about that card?
Well, Emma, I played quite a lot of the Simic Flash list, especially towards the end of last year and, in the last standard format. And I was never impressed with Brineborn Cutthroat because it always seems so like this dinky little 2-1, and then maybe it would get to a 4-3 and then it would just get killed. But like the real difference between that is that in the Simic Flash list, you were often still playing 1 spell a turn. You had these pretty expensive 4-drop spells from Mystic, Nightpack Ambusher. And so when you play Brineborn Cutthroat with spells like that, you can only really get it to be so large. But when in this kind of deck, when all your spells are, cost 1 mana or cost 2 mana, or, with the Cunning Nightbonder mana reduction ability, the Brineborn Cutthroat can really get out of hand.
Yeah, absolutely. And this, it feels more analogous to Tarmogoyf or something like that than just one of these dinky 2-drops that you can ignore forever. Eventually, you're chump blocking to stay alive every turn. Yeah,
absolutely. As we saw there, a 9/8 Brineborn Cutthroat. It's like probably one of the largest Brineborn Cutthroats I've ever seen. One of the largest merfolk I've ever seen, probably. And yeah,
we've defeated Jeskai Lucca. Does that mean we're done with it?
We are, Emma. We're done with it.
We are done with Jeskai Lucca. Everybody watching right now. Moving on to our 4th match. Who do we have playing?
Well, let's have a look. So, in the 4th match is going to be from Division 4. The first player is going to be Glory MTG, and Glory is on Teemo Reclamation. So this deck has been gaining a little bit of traction over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, so this is a deck that a lot of times Agent of Treachery isn't going to be particularly effective against, and you can even lean into a flash strategy similar to the one that we just saw from Bloody Mess Jess. In your post-board games, we see these negates, these Aether Gusts, these Nightpack Ambushers, and other Mystical Dispute all out of the sideboard. If Glory were to have gotten paired against Jeskai Lucca, she would have had a plan.
Absolutely. Interestingly, though, enough for her, Jeskai Lucca was not to be the matchup for this week, but it was, in fact, Mardu Knights. So Annabellis is our last player of the evening. She was actually also in Season 1 of the VML, and she is on Mardu Knights with Loris as the companion. This deck has also been gaining a lot of traction in the last few weeks.
Yeah, so Mardu Knights is just one of the things that, at the beginning of the show, we were talking about one of the best ways to attack these Jeskai Yori and Lucca decks. Is just kill them. Kick their teeth down their throat, into the game quickly. This is exactly that. We see Lords, we see things that apply and create so much pressure, and Luris, which punishes players for even giving you a second of breathing room. And Annabelicious trying to capitalize there and kind of getting paid off in a big way.
Absolutely, and it's interesting to me as to why you might choose a deck like this over something like the Obosh mono red deck. Do you think this deck maybe has a little bit more staying power with the, the Lurrus and the graveyard reanimation abilities?
So a lot of the time, this deck is going to be a little bit better once you actually get a bunch of its pieces together. The red deck pays you for hitting your Obosh, and it pays you if you hit Annex. But other than that, you kind of suffer from a problem where your cards aren't particularly strong. This deck, not that different, but it does have the upside of your cards working very well together. Say, once you actually get a few different lords out, your inspiring veterans, for example, or if you get multiple fervent champions, or if you get several worthy knights, all of a sudden, your cards are worth way more than the sum of their parts. And I think that's what Ambilicious is trying to capitalize on here.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, just as a quick aside, it's very interesting that you read her name as Annabelle.
I know I said it wrong. You just really don't have to go into it.
No, it's fine. It's because the first time that we had Annabelle on the stream back in season 1, I also thought that was her name. I just thought, like, what a great name. But Annabelle is, in fact, her name. And
yeah.
Let's go down to the match and see how Annabelle's Margin Knights does against Team of Reclamation. This Margin Knights has also been around a little while with various different iterations. We see a pretty reasonable opening hand there. 4 lands, 1 drop, 2 drop.
Yeah, this is something that you really don't ever want to be throwing back. You even get to cast your adventure creature as a 1-drop and a 2-drop on turn 3, so you really just have your curve filled up for you.
Absolutely. Oh, and Smitten Swordmaster as well. A bit of a blast from the past there. Although I have very fond memories of getting burned out by multiple Smitten Swordmasters out of the Golgari Adventure deck.
That is exactly the kind of card that plays to that sum of the parts strategy that I was talking about going into this match, in that it actually just pays off so hard for when you develop a battlefield.
Absolutely. We are going to see Glory do her very best to stop that from happening. Scorching Dragonfire going to exile that Worthy Knight. That was the 2-drop. Was it Worthy Knight? It was Worthy Knight. And then this Venerable Knight going to be getting in, pumped up by the Boulder Rush.
Ooh.
No. Wow, what a big coup there. Brazen Borrower going to return that Venerable Knight and 2 for the price of 1 fizzle the Boulder Rush on the remote Knight.
Yeah, and that's a rough exchange because you can see what Annabellius was going for, right? There was this opening to actually get 4 damage in, trigger your Knight of the Eben Legion, make use of all of your mana on a turn reeve to play a tap land with your aggro deck, and it just wasn't meant to be.
Absolutely. Glory doing a great job there of holding back the tide, keeping this swarm of knights at bay. Wilderness Reclamation, the namesake of the deck, now coming down on turn 4. The Knight of the Ebon Legion, though, doesn't really need that much help to be good. And Venerable Knight also joining the party here. We are going to see the Knight of the Ebon Legion swing in. Fight as 1 is an interesting addition to these Mardu Knights decks.
Yeah, just having a sort of protection spell to make sure that you actually get to keep all of your knights on the battlefield, it's great.
Absolutely. We're not going to see Favorite Passage being cracked just yet. Annabelle is considering whether to play the Smitten Swordmaster out without doing the drain side first. Decides to go for it. Of course, the Fighters 1, of course, being in hand. Perhaps being aware of the possibility of Flame Sweep and other sweepers coming out of the Reclamation deck.
Right, and it sends a big signal that Annabellius didn't cast the adventure half before casting the Smitten Swordmaster. I would imagine with open deck lists that Fighters 1 is on Glory's radar at this point.
Yeah, and interestingly also, you would imagine that if Flame Sweep was in hand for Glory, it would have gone on the stack with that Fabled Passage activation before the Plains comes in.
Correct.
So we are going to swing with the team here, but this 3/3 Shark being made by Shark Typhoon immediately going to get exiled with Dire Tactics.
Dead Shark, do.
You know, I actually did a very good yoga practice earlier today, so I'm just going to try and retain some of that calm and focus that I gained during during the meditative practice and not complain too much about the
Glory scrying top there.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what is coming up the top.
Oh.
Wait, is this lethal?
It is lethal.
It's lethal.
Jeez, one turn away.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate to see Glory scrying to the top and not being able to draw the undoubted answers that were there. Knight of the Ebon Legion, huge threat, and then of course that pump spell really getting Annabellis over the line. So
right.
Looking now at the sideboard, Duress is straight in. And then what else do you have considerations for here?
So the biggest things that I'm going to be looking at are just things with staying power and things that apply pressure in a vacuum. And here it kind of mostly just feels like we see Annabellius putting everything that has text in the deck and then just figuring out what the worst cards are. Rather than actually having a ton of cards that are great in the matchup. Duress, obviously very, very strong against a deck that's just a pile of spells. But past that, you end up in positions where some of your payoff cards can feel so redundant in these night decks that sideboarding is a little bit of a struggle at times.
Absolutely, and we do see some nods to that. The Smitten Swordmasters coming out, or some number of the Smitten Swordmasters coming out, and some number of Worthy Knights coming out. Not Smitten Swordmaster, not great when you're expecting the board to be cleared, on a regular basis.
Right, both of those cards encourage play patterns that play into Flame Sweep, which I imagine Annabellius pointedly is trying to avoid. So I actually think that's a good choice on sideboarding.
Yeah, and interesting to see that first hand of 7 being thrown back. 4 lands with 2 tap lands, perhaps a little bit too clunky in terms of mana. And we are going to see the second hand of 6 being kept there. Oh, always shows up at the right time. Fervent Champion, as we see, was the draw, but Venerable Knight is going to be the play.
It's just more damage to play the 2 1-on-1 rather than the Fervent Champion.
Yeah, 1 mana 2/1s. Still good. Still good in 2020. As we do see Blood Crypt shocking its way onto the battlefield untapped. Javier Dominguez is going to join the party. As we get going there. 4 damage coming in already on turn 2. And let's see how Glory recovers from this position.
Growth Spiral's a start. If Glory can have this into a Wilderness Reclamation, there's a real chance that this ends up breaking her way.
Let's see if she does have it here on turn 4. And as predicted, on her turn 3, of course, Growth Spiral. Growth Spiral basically being a Time Walk. Wilderness Reclamation is going to come down, untap all of those lands. It's going to be a little bit of a sweat for Annabellius from here on in. Pretty awkward, always playing into the possibility of Flame Sweep, as we do see it coming on the stack. I wonder if we will see this fight as one.
Gets to save 1 creature, so either way, this Flame Sweep's gonna be getting a 2-for-1.
Right. But the board presence, pretty important there. And of course, Venerable Knight with that death trigger actually pumping up the Fervent Champion. Pretty interestingly.
Going for 5 to the dome with Rimrock Knight.
Maximum damage output there for Annabellius, choosing to, as you say, go for the dome. Get that value as well off being able to play the 2 spells of Rimrock Knight. Scorching Dragonfire going to take down that Fervent Champion. Duress off the top. Oh, and Duress finding its intended target there, taking that Flame Sweep out of hand. However, on Annabelle's side, there's a Rimrock Knight and an Inspiring Veteran come up, but Also, not a huge amount of action. Will it be enough?
Oh no.
Yeah. I'm just checking. Can Loris play Duress on the grid? It can't, right?
It cannot. Absolutely
Okay.
not. No.
Only permanents.
Correct.
Okay, so we are going to see Rimrock Knight there getting in 4-3. Loris coming down now, and Vulnerable Knight is going to be.
Whoa.
Flame Sweep was the draw of the
Doing
top
it
for Glory.
So that was a strange spot where it may look like a mistake for Glory to do that with a Venerable Knight on the stack, but that actually was playing around the possibility of Annabelius being able to do anything else after the spell resolved.
Right. And Fire Prophecy was in fact the next draw off the top for Glory. So these rips are pretty impressive here. Although the two lords coming there from the Margin Knights deck also pretty threatening. Shot Typhoon!
Clawing back into this game.
Deck, I can't get enough of this. Shock Typhoon, just exactly the right size as well. 4-4, gonna eat that 3-3, and just being left now with a single Inspiring Veteran, unable to attack even with the protection of Fighters 1. And the second Shock Typhoon was, of course, cast, meaning every single non-creature spell is gonna start making these Shock tokens for Glory. How does the Mardu Knights deck, finish off those last few points of damage? Can it?
Well, drawing a couple of creatures in a row would go a long way. Here at this point, getting through this Shark Typhoon is going to be really tough. But a Smitten Swordmaster could do it. We could see Worthy Knight maybe help a little bit. But, Annabelius has one turn.
Oh, yeah. It's things aren't looking amazing here. This Inspiring Veteran is going to get in, and Fighters 1 is going to trade for that 2/2 Shark token. Not something that you really want to be doing, trading your cards for free tokens. The somewhat second/hidden mode of Shark Typhoon actually pretty powerful against these aggro decks. Oh. Unfortunately, no creatures coming off the top for Annabelius.
A lot of protection spells, and that's kind of the risk that you run when you load up with a bunch of Duresses and protection spells in a synergy aggro deck. Sometimes you just don't draw enough pieces, and you find yourself in a spot like this where Annabelius's deck is probably favored in a lot of situations, but that just flipped on its head when you spend 4 or 5 of the spells you draw that game on interactive spells with the deck that wants to be interacting.
Absolutely, and a few too many lands as well off the top. Going to seal the deal for Annabelius, and that is going to be game 2. So we are going to see game 3 between these two pretty cool decks. Glory did look like she was in a bit of a tight spot at one point in that game, but a few very well timed draws off the top really turned that around.
Yeah, that was such a close game.
All right, let's have a little review of the sideboarding. Smitten Swordmaster is going back in. Oh, trying to get that.
Gotta get through the baby sharks.
That's right. And one way to do that is, of course, taking life total directly down from your opponent.
I thought you were going to say via song, which, yeah.
I don't know why you would think that, Emma, because that would be entirely against my previous behavior at this point.
But I do.
All right, so we are going to see a mulligan to 5 from Annabelius, unfortunately, not liking the first 2 hands. I thought that maybe the previous hand was an acceptable keep, but I guess Annabelius thought otherwise. 2 1-drops in hand, the Venerable Knight coming down, but being at 5 on the play feels a little bit unfortunate.
The 6 was close, but I imagine in a deck like this that has so many 1-drops, you really just need to make sure that you're pressuring people out the gate. And we see Annabellius really placing an emphasis on that and kind of getting paid off.
Yeah, interestingly to see the Sacred Foundry being shocked, but just the one drop being played last turn. I thought maybe that the Black Lance Paragon would have been the spell for last turn, but we are going to see Fervent Champion getting in there for one. Unfortunately, that Venerable Knight being taken out by Scorching Dragonfire, meaning that it exiles and does not trigger the counter effect, the +1/+1 counter.
Yeah, so basically, I imagine in that spot we just saw Annabellius actually bluffing. Was a lot of it. She recognizes her life total doesn't matter very much in the matchup, and being able to just bluff something like fight as one is quite a big deal.
Okay, so we are gonna take a peek at Glory's hand there. Oh, sorry, I somehow set off my Siri on my phone. I don't know how. DRS is gonna have a look at Glory's hand. Two copies of Shock Typhoon, Expansion Explosion, and so one of those copies of Shock Typhoon is going to bite the dust.
Coast is clear, no flame sweeps. Annabellius basically saying, if you got it, you got it, but I gotta get through those Uras.
Absolutely. Sorry, so we are going to see the first Uro coming down. Uro, what a card. Like, I believe when this card was spoiled, there was this collective groan from across the Magic sphere as people the busted mythic.
Card is very strong.
Yeah, very strong indeed, and immediately finding a home in all manner of these mid-range to control strategies.
Look at that top deck. Fight as one off the top with a Lurrus and a Black Lance Paragon on the battlefield. This is going to be really hard for Glory to get out of. She's down to 5 already.
She is down to 5 already, and with only 4 mana on the battlefield and no Wilderness Reclamation yet. Difficult to leverage that mana advantage that the Reclamation deck usually has. Opt gonna be digging for answers, and this is where Fight as One is really gonna shine. Blast Zone off the top, a little late on the Blast Zone, unfortunately. It can kill 1 CMC creatures, but there is only one of those on the battlefield right now. And crucially, it does not cast Ura out of the graveyard. So, is that a second Uro in Glory's hand?
There is.
Okay, so we are going to see the second Uro get cast, gaining 3 life, going back up to 8. Unfortunately, even on board there with Fervent Champion's pump ability, looks like it's going to be pretty lethal on board, unless there's something I'm missing. Also slightly unfortunate that Auto Tapper decided to tap not Blast Zone.
Yeah.
To cast that arrow.
Oh, super lethal.
Super lethal. The Night Lord coming down, pumping up the team. Fervent Champion pumping up the Black Lance Paragon, and that's gonna do it. So we did see Mardu Knight take it down in 2 games to 1, in 3 games total.
And that Annabellius moving up to 2-1. Solid start.
Yeah, great start to the season for Annabellius. Just the 1 loss so far. Are you surprised by that the Mardu Knights took it down?
No, not at all. So that was one that it felt like, looking at Glory's interview here, it looks like she was a little bit nervous about the matchup. And Annabellius really just brought something to the table that was really good this week. It attacked the metagame at a really good angle. This is why people brew, why people bring kind of anti-meta decks to tournaments, right? As you kind of identify a problem with the big decks in a metagame, find a way to exploit the loophole that you find. And I think Annabellius just really kind of put the work in, and it paid off for her in a big way.
Absolutely, and I think if we look at some of the decks that we have seen throughout this evening, and I'm thinking in particular, of course, of the mono blue flash list from Jess, like this, it really just goes to show the level of dedication and talent we have in our players in the VML. And I think this is kind of something I wanted to round back to at the end. So obviously, thank you again for joining us, but also, like, we obviously are trying to highlight the talent that women and non-binary players, or as we like to say in the VML, non-male players, have and, you know, can demonstrate in these games. And I think even, obviously, things have changed a lot in Magic, and representation and all of that has gotten a lot better, largely thanks to people such as yourself and, you know, a few others who've fought a lot along the way for it. But something that really strikes me about the VML is just how creative our players are. We have so many people. Like, if you look at that other line at the bottom, the 9 other decks, there are some really, really interesting builds. We have some. So last season, one of the players who made it all the way to the top 8 did so with a Sultai list that was entirely her own creation, and we also had a lot of players that were, you know, perhaps anticipating the meta game by being on some of these newer decks before they're coming out. And I just think that our mission here is super important, that we're trying to showcase all of these talents that we do have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think y'all, you know, I'm obviously a little bit biased. I think y'all are doing a great job. This is a situation where it gives a lot of people who might otherwise feel less comfortable in more public environments, bigger tournaments, etc., an environment to really just thrive, kind of express their ability to play Magic from home, which is a great thing. I really love the thing that you all are doing. It's so easy to become a part of. If you want, you know, this is probably a great time to pitch how someone who is maybe thinking about getting involved could do that. I know y'all have another season coming up, and you know, I can't lie, I'm thinking of getting involved in it myself. I love what y'all do.
Well, I mean, you'd be more than welcome to join us, Emma. We do have another season coming up, and hopefully many more after that. If you do want to join the VML, you can type !join VML, as Caster Becky has done so in the chat. Do follow us on Twitter. The VML is run through a Discord, so that basically is how we organize everything from week to week. And also, we actually have some pretty exciting news. So this season, entry to the VML did come with an entry fee, but kind of scooped in with that entry fee was entry to a one-off open tournament. So the VML is actually hosting our own open tournament, and it's going to be on June the 27th. And that tournament is actually going to be open to all players, not just VML members and not just women and non-binary players. So it'd be really interesting to see, you know, some of our players matching up against, you know, a wider field as well.
Yeah,
and if you do want to do that, if you do want to do that, there will be information coming out on the Twitters. Follow us, Aspirant, do follow us for Goy Gaming. There will be a lot of information about the format and about how we're going to cover it, and how all the details are going to be up soon. So that does it for our 4 matches of the evening. Thank you once again, Emma, for joining us. It's been a real pleasure having you.
Happy to be here. Loved working with you. Hope to be back sometime.
All right. Without further ado, it's going to be good night from me. And from Emma, I presume.
Oh, I didn't know. All right. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for watching. Y'all better be here next week. Take care now.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.